Hi, this is Trevor Conquergood. Welcome to this week's RNK Software Club's video for the week, and the topic for this week is about backdrops. And a backdrop is essentially an image that will display on your screen, and then it allows you to, trace it or work on top of it as kind of like guidelines. And so there's more than one way to open up a backdrop. And probably the first way you'll learn about is the backdrop tool. And so with the backdrop tool, when you click on it, you can choose to open a backdrop. I guess Magic Block is there in my software because I have also activated Total Quilter. And so that if you have Total Quilter, then you can load a Magic Block, and it basically takes it to either way, you're basically opening up an image. It's just where does the software open to? And so when I click on backdrop, it opens to the images that come with the software. And of course, you can change the location of wherever you're, browsing. You can change to any location on your computer that you want with the drop-down menu here, or with the, sort of recently or favorite places, I guess. But one way or another, this will allow you to open up a backdrop. And when we say backdrop, we're talking about things like bitmap images like BMP or JPEG or GIF or TIFF. We're not really, I know this says vector images because you could open one with this tool, but vector images are different from the backdrops. And I'll just explain why. So click on a JPEG and click on open. And so now that JPEG is on my screen, but I want you to notice is that there are no shapes in the sequence view. And so essentially backdrops are graphics or images, photos, clip art, these kinds of things. And you can put them on your screen, and you can even resize them with either using a corner handle like this to just click and drag to resize your artwork, or you can use the properties box while you have the tool clicked for backdrop. Then your properties box will be the properties of your backdrop, and you can do things like make it a little bit lighter so that maybe it's not as bright and less noticeable. Well, maybe I've made it too far because I lost some of the colors, but as you can see, you can dim your backdrop. You could set it to a specific size, and so if you knew specifically what size you wanted, this is telling me in millimeters here. I guess if I want to do it in inches, then I'm going to need to right click on my rulers and change that to inches, and then these numbers will then be in inches. And so, yeah, if you want this to be specifically 2 inches tall, you can click apply and it will resize it. As soon as you start using any other tools, so for example, if I click on the regular select tool, notice that the backdrop is no longer selected, and it essentially becomes part of your screen, and it's not actually any embroidery shapes or any artwork shapes. It's part of your background. So that's what a backdrop is. It's the idea that you can bring any picture and then trace it. And you can see that the backdrop is really made up of pixels, dots of colors that make up that, little sort of dragonfly. And so the backdrop tool, if you want to change the size of a backdrop once you put it on your screen, you click back on the backdrop tool again, and that will turn on the selection of the backdrop and allow you to interact with its properties again. Like I said, once you click off or let go of that tool, you're no longer interacting with your backdrop. There are other ways to put a backdrop on your screen. First of all, you can use the browser on the right hand side. You've got your designs browser. You could point this to any location on your computer that you want to, and then hover over designs to see the designs. And so notice in here that this shows me things like WAV files as well as JPEGs. And so you can use your browser to bring a JPEG onto your screen. Now, what that did was, and what you may not have sort of recognized right away was going to happen, it's called Design 1, and it can only have one backdrop. And so when I came over to my Designs tab and I found a JPEG that I wanted to bring onto the screen, when I click and drag, as much as it adds it to the screen, what it also did was replace the existing backdrop. And just so you know, you can always do that. If you click on the backdrop tool and then you right click over top for the secondary menu, there is an option to load a new backdrop or delete the backdrop. Now, that's kind of an important, first of all, if you click on load backdrop, it allows you to browse through and click on a new backdrop to load. So there can only be one, I guess, is one of the things. And maybe that's something that we could learn to make it smarter and allow us to have multiple backdrops, but currently it's kind of got a limit of one. And so you can have any one backdrop on your screen at a time. Now, of course, you can start a new design, and then on the new design, have a different backdrop. And so, obviously you can do more than one backdrop, but not, I guess, on screen, it's going to be one. Another way that you can put a backdrop on your screen is actually just to click open. When you click on the open screen, it'll allow you to browse to any location of your computer and select an image to put onto your screen. And so notice that when you're in here, when you click on open, it's all files that you can open. And that includes embroidery formats, as well as the artwork formats. And so if you browse your computer and open a JPEG, it's the same as using the backdrop tool or using your library designs tab to bring in a JPEG. Once you open that JPEG, it's simply the backdrop. Now, what can you do with the backdrop? Well, you could use the digitizing tools to digitize it. You could use the automatic digitizing tools like the magic wand here to click on a shape and have the software automatically trace it for you. Notice here, so I've shown you this tool, the backdrop tool. What I didn't show you was the this one will hide the backdrop and show it again. So it doesn't delete it, it's like a hiding sort of view backdrop on off. So a lot of times when you're creating embroidery and you're making things, you might want to temporarily not see the backdrop so that you can be more focused on the elements that you've created. And so just know that there's that tool there as well. So the main thing is if you want to work with the backdrop, you have to click back on the backdrop icon. So that's where I was going to show you the right click and then the ability to delete a backdrop. So that will actually remove the backdrop from the program or from the design altogether. Of course, you can add it back in again. Just click on open. Now, I do want to point out something else. When I go to my designs tab, and I find a JPEG and I bring it onto my screen, notice that I added this red truck backdrop to a design that's called Design 2. And that is a little bit different. If I click on the Open tab and then I browse my computer and I find that same red truck, and now I'm going to click on Open, I want you to notice that when I open a backdrop, it actually starts a new design tab with the name of your program. So it now says redtruck.jpg, and that same red truck is still over here in Design 2. So the point there is when you click and drag either using the Designs tab or with the backdrop button, what you're really doing is adding a backdrop to the design that you're already working on. And when you click on the Open button and you choose to open a backdrop, it simply opens that as a new design. Now, once they're open, they don't behave any differently. I can still take this magic wand tool and start clicking onto the areas of that design. One of the things that I think you may not know about is, so for example, I'm just going to click on and assign some embroidery stitches to these elements that I've made here. And so let's just create some stitching for that tire, and you can see there that I've got some embroidery on the tire. So what I wanted you to see was, so we've got design truck.jpg. If I click on file and then save, it's now not going to save it as a JPEG, it's going to save it as a WAF, and we can call it red truck WAF, or if you want to rename it something else, that's fine. Decide where on your computer you want to save it. I'll just put it on my desktop. It'll be called redtruck.waf. And so when I close this design, this redtruck.waf, and we'll even close up design 2 with the red truck so that it's no longer on our screen. And we can even close design one, which just has the little dragonfly there. So now when we click on open and we browse to the desktop and we can see the red truck. Now the icon that you see is only representative of the embroidery. So it doesn't show you that there was a red truck picture in the background. It just sees the embroidery shapes and makes an icon. So I guess all I got done was the tire. Anyway, when I click on it and say open, it reopens that red truck .waf design. Now, this is the part I wanted to make sure that you guys all understood. I think it was 2 updates ago, we added the ability for the software to remember the backdrop. And so if you want to remember a backdrop, in other words, when I open this WAF file, if I click right here on the backdrop tool, it puts the backdrop. So the backdrop is actually saved with your WAF file. So when you open a design or start a new design and you put a backdrop in and then save it as a WAF, if you want to come back and work on it more later and do some more digitizing of some of these different areas, you can still come back to them, select those areas and, do whatever kind of embroidery that you want to on them. But when you save it, the backdrop gets saved with it. And so I thought that would be something that people would enjoy knowing, because if you don't save the backdrop, then, if you want to rework on the design, you kind of have to add the backdrop again. And the nice thing here is the backdrop lined up perfectly with where it was the first time. And so it makes it easy for me to kind of like come back to a job and keep working on it. And so that's something to know, that when you actually put a backdrop in a design, it does get saved with it. It won't immediately be visible, but like I showed you, if you just click on the backdrop tool, it does actually turn it right back on. Now, like always, if you're like, I want to change the backdrop, I've done the truck and tree, now I want to add, some other elements to it, then you can right click and choose to load a new backdrop. And if you don't want the backdrop to be saved with your design, you can click delete backdrop and that will take the backdrop right out of the design altogether. And so there you have it, a whole video about how to open up a backdrop and how to save it and change the ones. And I hope that helped you guys out, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you very much for listening, and bye for now.